Hey, what's up and hello? This is the Chris Nicole giving you my views on life, love, and the world of entertainment through my eyes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you are watching this live. Hello, crew. Hope all is well this Sunday morning for me in California. So, a lot of people throughout the years have asked me what my experience was during what they call the trial of the century, and being here in LA and experiencing that tension that was occurring then. But to be honest, that tension that is occurring now. We are literally in 2024. OJ has passed and people are still upset and still pissed off, just like it was 1994, 95 all over again. Okay. Like literally, this man cannot rest in peace because you still have people who are still going on and on about OJ. And of course, the trial that he was acquitted of all charges, mind you, he was acquitted. I'll also compare others celebrities who have had some of the same similar charges that never got the same type of vitriol that OJ has faced and is still facing, even with him being gone. But we're going to take a trip down memory lane. For those who don't really understand OJ, he has a tainted legacy. Should he have a tainted legacy, though? That's something that we can definitely discuss. But I'm going to take a trip down memory lane because the trial, in my opinion, has overshadowed the hard work and dedication that this man had for years to his craft as being one of the biggest football players that we have seen of this generation. Hey, GSP, hope all is well, girly. Hope all is well. So, OJ Simpson. Now, again, born and raised here, but don't get me wrong. I didn't care for OJ like a lot of people in my community, especially in the LA area and in the Bay Area where he is from. He was born and raised in San Francisco, in the projects to be exact. We learned or was taught, like I was taught, because of course I was not born when OJ was in his prime during his football years. We were taught at a very young age that OJ was insignificant in our community because he abandoned us a long time ago. And it's sad because, again, when you have people that look like you who were born and raised in California, OJ was truly us growing up in the projects in San Francisco. But we learned very young, whether it was our parents or our parents teaching us, that OJ didn't give a damn about us. All right. Hey, Belle. Hope all is well. So this was OJ during his prime. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. I was told that he really was special on the field. We can't deny him of that. He was special on the field. He went to City College first, then to USC and to his professional career, but he damn near had almost a perfection when it came to his football career, from my understanding. Okay. Again, he won the Heisman Trophy. Very rare for Black athletes to win the Heisman Trophy, especially at that time when he won it in 68. So it was a major accomplishment. But, however, we are also taught in my community, especially around the time that OJ was around. OJ was born in 47. He was around the Bay Area when the Black Power movement was at its inception, like in the beginning and also in its prime. The Black Panther Party, founded in Oakland, right across the bridge, he was in San Francisco. So he was very aware of what was going on. Very aware. And you guys hit the like button on the way in. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining me today. So, he was very aware of that. And what we were taught and what they were taught is that when you end up getting status achievement, you reach back in your community and you pay it forward and you stand up for what's right, especially when we see injustice when it comes to our people. And OJ didn't do that. He didn't. He did not do that. For example, the Cleveland Summit, I believe they call it the Cleveland Summit. This was in 1967, where there were several Black athletes in support of Muhammad Ali when he refused to go to the Vietnam War. And OJ wasn't there. And from my understanding, what I was told and based on my research, he was very aware of this meeting. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was even invited to this meeting. But he pretty much felt like that had nothing to do with him. Okay. That's from what I have seen. Now, again, that's alleged, but apparently he knew about it. He didn't want anything to do with it. That was the first red flag for a lot of people in the Black community. But people held on to him still at that time because he had the Black family, beautiful Black wife, beautiful Black kids. So at that point, when he was in the NFL, he was unstoppable. He definitely was doing his thing and had his family that he was taking care of. So when you have a lack of Black men who are in the household and he's a successful Black man, it was one of those things where people were side-eyeing him, but they continue to hold on. They continue to hold on because, he had the Black wife and those Black kids to take care of. So, then again, this is what I'm actually hearing from my father, my uncles, because again, I wasn't born at this time. But this is what it was, where they were like, okay, we see you not really supporting the Black community, but you got that Black family, so we're going to continue to let you slide until we see something different. Hey, Ruby. So with that, the problem is he started, well, hell, he probably already had it in his mind because, again, this was back in 67, 68. That saying, I'm not Black, I'm OJ. OJ really started, in my opinion, to see success as staying away from the Black community as much as possible. So the I'm not Black, I'm OJ is what he truly wanted to represent. And next thing you know, he left his wife and his kids and started dating Nicole Brown, allegedly while he was still married to Marjorie, his wife. Allegedly they were still married. And then from there, he literally had his young tenderoni, and next thing you know, he retired and he became more of a household name with his Hertz commercials and movie appearances. Okay. And more, he was separating himself more and more. So, hey, Wanda. Hello, hello. Oh my gosh, I missed some of you guys. I haven't seen you guys in a minute. And our crazy ratchet show is coming up soon, next Saturday, I believe. So we'll be back at it. But hello, hello. Hit the like button on the way in. So, I say all of this to say, quite honestly, if anyone should be annoyed with OJ and his legacy and his lack of consideration, it really should be the Black community, his own community. But as usual, we are always there to pick up our own, even if they don't deserve it. Yes, Belle, he did a couple of things. He did Roots. He did a couple of things. He went from football, retired, to, Hollywood, trying to act. And he was somewhat successful in that. He was a household name at that time. He was definitely, in my opinion, just based on what I'm seeing, now when you have athletes who retire, they end up being sportscasters, or, they have, like, for example, Club Shay Shannon Sharp. He, to me, was the beginning of a Black man being able to retire and truly create another career out of retirement. To me, he was the first example of that. You know what I mean? So, yes, I agree, Wanda. I definitely agree. This actual video is to give a very short brief for those who don't really know OJ's legacy, because unfortunately, especially a lot of people who were born in the 90s, 2000s, or people who just OJ wasn't relevant in their world, they don't really know who OJ Simpson is besides his trial. They really don't know who he is. And I'm giving my perspective as someone who was born and raised out here, and what my experiences was seeing this growing up. I want to give my thoughts on it. And I'll give my thoughts on if I feel like he did it or not, because everybody else giving their opinion on it. So hell, I'm going to give my opinion on it too. So this is OJ before all the drama happened. Now, March 3rd, 1991. Now, let me make this very clear. We get into the late 80s, the early 90s. And unfortunately, I was very aware of my surroundings. And I say unfortunately because when I really think about it, I was accustomed to things that were not normal. And so, depending on where you were from, a lot of us, of course, remember the Ready Rock epidemic. But when I really think back at it, there's no way in elementary school and middle school I should really know that there's certain colors I should wear in certain neighborhoods. Like, you shouldn't be that young knowing what colors. Mind you, you're a kid, but you shouldn't wear certain colors in certain neighborhoods, or just wear black, or wear things that are very neutral. Okay. So that was already the issues that were going on in LA as far as the gang violence, the epidemic, with the Ready Rock. And then here it is in March 3rd of 1991, we have the Rodney King tape that's released. I remember watching this on the news with my family. Okay. And while I had known at a young age that a lot of people in my community didn't trust cops, this was the first full visual as I could see as to why. And it kind of put a plant in me to kind of side eye cops. It did. Because what we saw was just something that was illegal in my opinion, unethical in my opinion, just all around just craziness. And you heard about these stories, but no one was able to actually record it. Now there was a recording. So this happened March 3rd of 1991. Okay. Yep, exactly, Ruby. So you being a Cali girl too. I know you from the Bay, but you being a Cali girl, you'll totally understand where I'm coming from on this. Now there's no red and blue in the Bay Area, but there's still territories. There's still territories on certain things. Then we have Latasha Harlins. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this story. Latasha was 15 years old. This happened, I believe, March 16th of 1991. So not even 2 weeks after the Rodney King tape was released. She was in a grocery store, got into some type of physical altercation, whatever the dispute was, with the store owner who could not speak English, apparently over some orange juice. Latasha had money in her hand. Whatever dispute was, there was a tussle. Next thing you know, Latasha is walking out of the store. This lady ends up putting one in her head. Okay. And she, of course, passed instantly. She didn't even see it coming. That happened literally 2 weeks after. The lady ends up getting arrested, but in a nutshell, she only gets probation. She gets no time, nothing. She gets probation. And even with her getting probation, she was sliding down. I remember where she was sliding off of her chair, sliding down like the world was over. And I'm like, you not even getting jail time, you getting probation. So there was injustice. Tupac was talking about it. Everybody was talking about it. So the tension in LA was insane. insane at this time. And mind you, I am a child and I feel the tension. Okay. So we had two things back to back. She ends up getting probation. The Rodney King trial, the police officers that were beating him, they end up going to trial. In 1992, the verdict comes out. They're acquitted of all the charges of beating Rodney King. They found them not guilty. And then the LA riots went down. And when they went down, baby, they went down. Now, as much as, of course, I am blessed to have parents that made sure they kept an eye on me, because there were people who literally was my age out there in the streets during this time also. I am grateful for that, but I will say that was probably the first time in LA that I felt a sense of I can actually feel safe being around LA, and I'm Black, and I feel like, I'm kind of protected, because at that point, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything with that. The riots, they could not do anything. Unfortunately, when people get upset, they start burning stuff down and they start rioting, doing a lot of things. Now, unfortunately, though, there were a lot of stores that were affected, including stores of Black owned businesses. But again, that's where, if you guys have noticed, especially in California, if you notice, there was a time that after the riots, people were starting to put up signs that actually say Black owned business. If you guys remember that, because I didn't really see that beforehand. You would have to walk into the store or walk into the restaurant, or you just knew from word of mouth it was a Black owned business. Once the riots happened to me, I saw that even more, that they were putting up signs in the windows that they were a Black owned business. And I personally think that came from making sure that if something else went down, don't touch my store because I'm you. That's my opinion on it. But I started, they did. They burned Black businesses too. They didn't know it was a Black business though. And maybe some of them did and they just didn't care. But from my understanding, a good amount of them didn't know that they were Black businesses, which is why all of a sudden you had, the whole Black business sign that was up there. So this was all before 1994. Okay. This was in a span of a year with Rodney King and Latasha Harlan, but literally this was all in a span of a year. We had like the Boys in the Hood movie that came out about the gang violence. This was all going down. And so here we are in 1994, and it's all over the news that two people were literally slaughtered in Brentwood, of all places, which Brentwood was one of those places. Like Brentwood was another version, I guess, like of Beverly Hills. Wasn't Beverly Hills money, but it was still money in Brentwood. We hear that they were completely slaughtered, and they were showing us pictures, of course, not of them, but just even seeing the red that was coming down the stairs. So we find out, yes, Menace to Society too. A couple of stuff came out around that time. I think Menace to Society was 93, right after the riots, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. But we do know Boys in the Hood was like around 90, 91, around that time. Because I remember John Singleton was really out there, and he was representing as the director of Boys in the Hood when all of that stuff was going down. So 1994 happens, and then we find out one of the victims is OJ's wife, ex-wife. And what I do know is this. People definitely didn't care for OJ in my community. I'm speaking from my own experiences. Didn't care for OJ. But once we saw this, and mind you, I remember this also really well, because anybody who knows about high-speed chases in California, especially certain freeways, more than likely the helicopters is going to pass by your house. So I remember when he was on the freeway, the helicopters was passing by our house, and typical just community behavior, we would go out, you know what I'm saying, like waving our hands and, like, hey, and we was like, hey, go OJ, go OJ, go OJ, go OJ, acting a fool, right? And the thing is, was it because we really was just rooting for him? No, it was more so that we were rooting for this corrupt system to be exposed. And here it was, a black man, even though he didn't consider himself black, but here it is, a black man who is running, you know what I'm saying, from who we saw as the enemy at the time, especially after everything that went on. LA, in the LA area, was just trying to regroup from the riots. And then here it is that y'all chasing after another black man. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, we sure was, Bill. Yes, he did make higher learning, Ruby, but that was later on. I'm talking about in this particular moment from like 90 to 95. And in the process, he was also doing poetic justice at that time too, but he was out there strong during the Rodney King stuff and everything that was going on. But yeah, we was cheering. We was cheering like, yeah, waving at the cameras and everything. Because this here representing, here they go again, going after another black man. Here they go again, going after another black person, automatically making it seem like he's guilty. Okay. So for me and for others, it was beyond people cheering for OJ. It was about trying to finally get back at a system that had been effing us over since the beginning of time. All right. So they arrest him. This is one of the lighter pictures of him. If you guys remember that time, or better yet, if you remember, for those who haven't watched People versus O.J. Simpson done by Ryan Murphy, is on Netflix. I will highly recommend it. I will also recommend looking at the documentaries, but this was the picture that was on the magazine after he was arrested, and they made him look darker, which again, that also comes into play with the colorism and everything else that happens. They made him look darker, because they have this mentality where the darker you are, the more of a villain you look like, like I've talked about the mulatto versus the buck type of mentality. So that also pissed off people in the community, because it just enraged us that even a man like OJ, who had been pretty much kissing the other side's asses for decades at that point, he had a freaking, $1 million mansion in Brentwood, probably had millions of dollars. And even with him, you were making him look darker, and you're automatically making him guilty. And we don't even know what the hell is going on yet. Okay. So the trial of the century happens. And to be quite honest, at my age, I was very attentive to listening to the trial. Now, I will say this, looking back at former video clips of the media, I would say that what you experienced back then, in my opinion, was what we see now. If people watch the media to actually get their feedback on the trial, you automatically thought OJ was guilty if you listen to the media. But if you listen to the trial, if you actually was there day by day listening to the trial, you thought otherwise. Because one thing that they've constantly said is that he was taking a trip to Chicago that same night with what happened to Ron and Nicole. And they're trying to say that he did this to both of them. And mind you, if you guys know, it was brutal. It was brutal what happened to them. Okay, very brutal. So in that time frame, he only had a short amount of time frame to be able to do that, be able to go back to his house, clean up somewhere, and be able to take his freaking car and get on that flight. And yet, only thing that they found in his car was slight, like not enough for what we saw as far as how brutal those attacks were. For everything that they said how brutal it was, it wasn't adding up. And it wasn't even adding up for me at my young age. Oh yeah, we sure did. You better say it, Ruby. We was watching this in class. And it was getting to the point where there was tension amongst teachers and students because everybody has such a strong opinion of this at this time. Yes, the 405 child, the 5, the 110. Absolutely. Absolutely, GSP. Yeah, we were. And it wasn't because we liked them. It was because we was like, yeah, like y'all keep messing with us. And now you going after him. Like, I remember the chant. We was like, go OJ, go OJ. We was up there dancing. And then again at the same time, of course, because there were cameras. So we was like, hey, we on TV. It makes sense because the social climate at the time was yeah, and I don't think he even still learned his lesson even after this. But let me continue. So he goes to trial, and it's definitely, thank God for those two men who are right next to him. And I mean right next to him, not the ones who behind him. But if it wasn't for those two men right there, Johnny Cochran and F. Bailey, I want to say Bailey has passed on recently also. Those two men, especially Johnny Cochran, is the reason why that man was able to be free. Point blank, period. If it was not for them, it wouldn't happen, because Johnny Cochran was a master in understanding his jury, his audience, especially doing everything he could to get the Black community on OJ's side, because that was very important considering the racial tension that was happening at that time. Now, I can't confirm if he did stage, because in the People versus OJ TV series on Netflix, they made it seem like Johnny Cochran staged OJ's home to make it more Afrocentric. And he did that because there were a decent amount of Black people on the jury, because they were trying to move the actual trial, but he wanted it there downtown LA area because he knew he would get a good amount of people who look like OJ in the jury. If he did that, that was very genius of him. Again, Johnny Cochran was one of the best of the best. I don't think we still to this day, I don't know if we're going to have another Johnny Cochran again. That man truly was a master at what he did. And he knew that one of the best ways to get the Black community on his side was to evoke emotions and get people emotional about how this man, even though he had abandoned us a long time ago, how this man was pretty much getting railroaded when it came to the system. So with that, of course, you guys know that he was acquitted of all charges. This trial went on, I can't even remember how long it went, but I'll tell you this: when the verdict came out, I was at home. My mama let me stay home. She let me stay home. She was like, absolutely not. You can stay home. And I remember, of course, he was found not guilty. The whole neighborhood was screaming. The whole neighborhood was screaming, and it was complete opposites. You had the neighborhood, my community screaming. But then again, I think we did have other people in my community still that were, I think we still had white people in our community and some Asian people and some Hispanic people in my community at that time, if I'm not mistaken. But all the Black people was cheering. And then, of course, the people who had a difference of opinion, they were crying, they were upset. And so we find this out. Do I feel OJ learned his lesson from that? No. I think he felt like once he was acquitted, it was going to be business as usual and everyone was going to love OJ again. And unfortunately, that was not the case. You tried to say you're Black, you're not Black, you're OJ. You learned you were Black even after you being acquitted. You learned that you were definitely Black even after they found you not guilty. Let me see what you're saying. Cochran did tell OJ to put up Black art and take photos of his. Oh yeah, I believe that. I definitely believe it. I definitely believe it for sure. I just didn't know for sure if that was something that was documented, but they did, of course, show that in the TV series. But yeah, it was a genius move. It was a genius move. Was it a manipulative move? Yeah, but at the same time, this is why, as much as I felt like I should have went to law school, I could not rock with defending people that I feel like are not worthy of being defended. I just, for me, for my moral compass, when you're a lawyer, you have to sometimes manipulate the system to win. And Johnny he was good at that, no lie. Did you see when they announced the verdict during the Oprah show? No, we were actually watching the news. We didn't even watch the Oprah show. We watched the news. And then, of course, after he was acquitted, it was a big frenzy still. You had people like Cato. I don't know if you guys remember Cato, who was OJ's housemate at the time, who was like sleeping in the guest house in the back. He pretty much was on, I think, Saturday Night Live or Mad TV or something like that, which honestly is interesting that no one saw people like that being in poor taste for using two people who were literally slaughtered. No one saw that in bad taste, but everything that OJ did was in bad taste. Everything he did, even just going to church or going, you know what I'm saying, out with his family or whatever case, he was all in bad taste when he did it. So, child, y'all know who this is, right? I hope y'all know who this is. It was interesting because all the black people were cheering the white. Yeah, it was a true divide. It was a true divide. Mark Furman. I don't know if you guys remember this. I don't know if you guys watched the TV series. But he was I believe he was the lead detective on this case. And literally what happened was they discovered these tapes that a journalist or a script writer or somebody actually had of him, and he was dropping in bombs and talking about black people like it was nothing. And that ended up being out there. And then literally when he came into the actual trial, he pleaded the fifth for everything that the defense asked him. Okay. But interesting enough, he pleaded the fifth. And then one of the attorneys on OJ's side said, is it safe to say, are you pretty much going to plead the fifth with everything that I'm going to ask you? And he says, yes. He didn't say I plead the fifth on that too. He says, yes, I'm going to plead the fifth on everything. So then at that point, the attorney said, did you plant any evidence? Did you plant anything in regards to this case? Does he say, no, I didn't, but I plead the fifth? No. He doesn't answer, and he says he plead the fifth, even though this attorney just asked him a a very, very serious question. He asked him, did you plant evidence? Did you plant anything? Did you corrupt the actual scene with whatever? And he pleads the fifth. And so at that point, I think a lot of people said at that point, oh, this trial is effed up. Like, what else is there to say between that and the gloves? If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. There was nothing else to say. If you watched the trial, there was nothing else to say. It would have been very hard for them to have a reason showing that OJ was guilty. In my opinion, there wasn't enough of his own DNA. With everything that happened with those two, there wasn't enough of OJ's DNA really to say that he did it. And let's not forget that some of the things that they claim they caught, the glove, the socks, a lot of people speculated where it was, how it was perfectly set, planted. Some have even alleged that it was, his DNA or his red sauce, if you know what I mean, was poured on there. So it wasn't actually, so there was a lot of speculations that were going on at that time. But of course, between Mark Furman and the glove, he was found not guilty. Now, with that being said, did he do it? Now, one thing I remember is that, of course, I couldn't drive at the time, but me and I think it was a couple other girls I was in dance class with, and our parents, because we weren't that far from Nicole's condo, they decided to let's take a ride over there and check it out. This was after it was all said and done. I don't think at the time though he was found not guilty. I think this was during the trial. So when I got and it's so crazy, I remember this stuff. This now, mind you, Nicole's condo, what you see of it today is totally different than what it was in 1994. What I remember, of course, I remember the gate. I remember the steps. I remember that. What I really remember is that her condo was right next to an alley. Okay. I remember an alley, and I also remember apartments that were like 2 or 3 stories high right next to the alley and right next to her condo. So it was like her condo, alley, apartment. And there were plenty of people who parked in that alley. So even at my young age, I said, how in the hell didn't anyone hear anything? Any scuffle, any nothing, no screaming? Like, how did not anyone hear anything? And then no one looked outside of their window and looked down. No one came outside. It just seems really off. Now, in certain communities, you hear someone screaming or you hear a snap, crackle, pop. You may not look outside because you minding your business because you really don't want to be, you know what I'm saying, a witness to anything. But in this situation, in that neighborhood, it just didn't make sense to me. Now, I could not find for the life of me an aerial view of Nicole's home. They had plenty of aerial views for OJ's home, but I could not find any like actual aerial view of Nicole's condo. But these are some of the things that I could find based on 1994. Okay. And I was able to find a drawing of someone mapping out what her home looked like. And I knew I was right. There was an alley. There was an alley right next to her home. You see this? It has like talking about the footprints, the children's room, the back alley. There was an alley, and there was literally apartments right next to it. And so, do I think OJ did it? I don't think there's no way in the world OJ could have physically done it himself. You had Ron, who apparently was a black belt, specialized in martial arts or one of those. He specialized in it. They even said that he fought. I don't think that man was capable of doing that, and literally no one screaming, yelling consistently. It's just not adding up. Now, I said him physically doing it. Does he possibly know who did it? Maybe. Did he possibly, allegedly maybe pay someone? It's funny you say that, but hey, India, how are you? You think he did it? You think he physically did it? You think OJ paid someone to do it? That is possible. I don't think he physically could do it. There's no way you could have done what you did and literally go back to your house and not have traces of red sauce all over everything you touched, and then literally go to Chicago within an hour or so. Like, it doesn't make sense. Also, considering the fact that people are saying they really didn't hear anything, I think someone alleged that maybe they heard one scream, but no one heard anything. In my opinion, it sounds like it was a professional job. It was professional because we know that, the throat was definitely, and typically, just me looking at true crime documentaries, people who are professional and they know what they're doing, that's the first place that they typically go for is the throat. Because if you go for the throat, you can't really hit, you can't really scream, you can't do anything. So that would easily explain why no one heard anything, and even the kids were still asleep in the home. The fact that no one heard anything. So to me, if somebody immediately knew to go for that portion, their necks first, that sounds professional to me. It really does. But they accused him of doing it. So since they accused him of doing it, the burden of proof was on the DA's office. And in my opinion, there wasn't enough proof. There was not enough proof. And I remember vividly when I went there, at my young age, I said, now how in the hell did this happen? And no one heard or saw anything. No one heard or saw. It just didn't make any sense to me. At that age, it didn't make any sense to me. So for me, even when he was found not guilty, I was happy because I was like, I don't think they had enough to say he did it. And he was only on trial as if he did it. They didn't say like it wasn't a for hire type situation. They didn't accuse him of that. They said he physically did it. I can't see him physically doing it. Another theory out there, they try to say that his son did it because his son had a history of violence. In my opinion, and apparently they say that OJ knew that his son did it. If his son did it, I don't think OJ would have taken a rap for his son. OJ seemed to be all about OJ. And based on apparently their own relationship, because his son ended up going to military school, I'm sure, of course, they loved each other. But based on what we've heard about OJ was narcissistic as hell. If Jason actually did it, I don't see OJ taking the rap and going through all of that for his son, especially because he wanted to be liked and wanted to be a celebrity so much. I don't see him doing that. Let me see. I always thought, yeah, you can agree with that. Yeah, I just can't see him physically being able to do it, especially with two people, especially with one having a specialty in martial arts. They didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they didn't. But this is for people who watched the trial, and you can still see clips of the trial online. People who watch the media, again, what do they say? Whoever controls the media controls the mind. If you looked at the media and only got your coverage from the media, you automatically thought he was guilty. And let's just keep it real, because he was Black, a lot of people thought he was guilty. Let's just be honest here. We could say all day that race don't play a part. Yes, the hell it does. It does. Even with OJ smooching with, everyone in Hollywood and smooching with the police or whatever the case may be, OJ, in my opinion, got different treatment versus someone who was white who would have had the same type of charges. Now, he was acquitted, so should his legacy be tainted? I don't think his legacy should be tainted, especially when you're acquitted. It's one thing if you're a Jeffrey, I forgot what the other guy's name is, a Harvey Weinstein. You actually go through trial, you're proven guilty, we have the proof. But interesting enough, I feel like they haven't got the vitriol like OJ did. We heard about the vitriol, but it wasn't to the extent of OJ. OJ could not rest pretty much from 94 until him passing. And still to this day, they are dragging his name through the mud, even with him passing. And the reason why I say that his legacy shouldn't be tainted, because I'm going to give you examples of those that don't look like him, that haven't had the same issues that OJ faced. Y'all remember who he is? Let me know in the chat or in the comment section who he is. This man was an actor. His name was Robert Blake. Big time actor in Hollywood, had been around for decades as a Hollywood actor. Well, he got accused of unaliving his own wife and the mother of his child. He went to trial for that. While they all speculated that he did it, he did not, absolutely did not go through the same stuff that OJ went through. They weren't calling it the trial of the century. It wasn't on every television station like OJ's situation was. And he is definitely a popular Hollywood actor. He passed, I believe, last year in 2023. He was acquitted. They vaguely talked about him passing, but do you still see people dragging his name through the mud? No. Do you still people actually at like dragging through the mud, actually saying like people who look like him or other people who don't look like him keep saying that he was guilty, and constantly follow him all over LA or wherever he goes? No, they didn't. They did not do that to Robert Blake. And it's literally the exact same thing that they accused OJ of. The difference is that makes him more cold-blooded and calculated is that if he allegedly did it, but again, he was acquitted, he was actually taking her out to dinner and was with her when it happened. So that makes it even more, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was trying to keep her, they were trying to imply that he was trying to keep her guards down so he could do that because he was pretty much calling her a con artist, how she got preggers on purpose to pretty much trap him. So this is a great example of how even if there is rumors or people who have their issues, comparing to OJ, it's not the same situation as far as what they were accused of, but as far as the attacks, as far as the media and stuff is concerned, nothing compares. Nothing compares. And he's been able to rest peacefully because he passed last year. And do you hear anything? Did you even see a lot of videos and people on the news talking about how much of a horrible man he was? No, they mentioned that he was on trial, he was acquitted, but they really talked about his legacy as an actor. That's what they did. Another, Hugh Hefner. Now, Hugh Hefner has passed, and yes, they did do a documentary on Hugh Hefner after he passed. But interesting enough, you didn't hear about any scandals or anything that was blatantly put out there while that man was living. And he lived to live. I think he was like in his 90s when he passed. But even with that documentary, for the most part, is his legacy tainted? No. Matter of fact, Hugh Hefner didn't even go to trial for anything. He was never, he was truly one of those people who was able to leave this earth unscathed to a certain extent, where all of the things that they accused him of after he passed, I don't think he never faced trial for anything that he was accused of. And yet, even with the documentary, his legacy has been tainted. He's still known as the guy who created Playboy, and that money is still rolling in. That money is still rolling in. I don't know who's getting that money because I don't think Hugh Hefner had kids, but that money is still rolling in. So these are examples that I'm talking about. And even with OJ's going to, and I'm gonna repeat myself again, I didn't care for OJ. I'm not gonna celebrate him passing though, like other people are talking about some good riddance and everything else. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. I didn't care for the man. I definitely feel like even after he got off, he still felt like he could go back to being OJ. And then we know the stupidity of him, of course, stealing his own stuff back. I understand it was his stuff, but the stupidity of him doing what he did in Vegas, as if you didn't still have a target on your back, says a lot about his mentality. He had too much ego and pride in him, and it clouded his judgment. He really thought he could go back being O.J. Simpson, the juice that everyone loved in L.A. Hell no. So he ends up getting that, and they give him, what was it, like a decade? They gave him so much where it's just like, this has nothing to do, in my opinion, with just what he did in Vegas. This has to do with him getting away in 94 and getting his not guilty verdict in 95. That's what that had to do. But again, that was his stupidity and his ego. But did he ever truly come back? He did his, what I call, Chitlin circuit right after he was found not guilty. Made it seem like he wanted to get soul food. Made it seem like he wanted to go to the local Baptist church in LA. I even saw through that even at my young age. I was like, oh, okay, pandering at its finest. Like you would never be in our community, ever be in our community if it wasn't for the fact that that black man got you off. And the black community rallied behind you because that black man was representing you. If it wasn't for Johnny Cochran, I don't think a lot of people would have embraced him in our community because Johnny Cochran was very respected in our community. Right after the OJ trial, he was able to get off Geronimo Pratt, who was a former Black Panther who was accused of unaliving people in the 70s, and it wasn't true. And he was pretty much in San Quentin for like 20 something plus years, and they finally exonerated him, and that was because of Johnny Cochran. So he was really respected. If it wasn't for him, the black community would have said, screw you, OJ, because you screwed us a long time ago. But right is right and wrong is wrong, and fair is fair. He was acquitted. Robert Blake was acquitted. Hugh Hefner never went to trial for the stuff that he allegedly did. But these men can literally kind of still rest in peace, while OJ can't rest in peace. As soon as he passed, you had so many hit pieces of OJ. It really felt like it was 94 to 95 all over again with this man. To the point where people don't even care or seem to forget that he has 4 children who loved him very dearly. His ex-wife, who really, let me go back to this beautiful sister right here. Let me go back. Yeah, I'm gonna go back. This black woman really could have threw him under the bus. She really could have. She really could have maximized as much as she could off of that situation back in 94, 95. I am sure she got offers and calls galore at that time, but she didn't. She kept it classy. She, these are, I'm saying, this is her father's, her children's father. She didn't do none of that. And props to her, because clearly, based on what I've heard and what I've seen, she kind of got screwed over in that situation with him. OJ left her apparently while he was dealing with Nicole. So, but she really could have threw him under the bus. So for those who try to make it seem like black women don't be protecting a black man, oh yes, the hell they do. Because she really could have sat up there and said, screw you, and been a scorned woman and really decided to do a number on him during that time. She probably could have made millions of dollars off of OJ in this drama. She was absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Mind you, rumor has it, based on a documentary, you remember his friend. What's the friend's name that was driving the car? I'm drawing a blank now. What's the man's name that was driving the car when he was going down the freeway? His high school friend. He grew up with him. Apparently, Marjorie, the first wife, and his friend, his quote unquote best friends, they were in a relationship first. And OJ allegedly stole this woman from his friend. So that just shows you his alleged mentality even back then. OJ was for OJ. And he had that mentality even after, you would think, that trial that he went through in 94 and 95, that would have really humbled him. And he would have really just kind of stayed under the radar as much as he could. But he kind of came back out like, hey, I'm OJ, I'm Juice again. People love me. You see, I'm not guilty. So you gotta love me again like you loved me before. And he damn sure didn't get that treatment. But to me, in my opinion, until up to him getting, I guess, sick or passing, I think that he did everything he could, even if it was a way to troll or whatever the case may be. He did everything he could to try to regain that attention and that admiration that he once had. I really think that he was chasing that after he realized that it was done and he wasn't going to get that anymore. He did everything he could to try to obtain it. Even if it was negative press, it was still press to him. Because remember, he started randomly giving opinions on like trending topics and trending events with celebrities and stuff. He started doing that randomly, like within the last couple of years. And I was like, why the hell does OJ need to comment on this? Because again, he craved attention, in my opinion. And for him, whether it was good or bad attention, he still wanted that attention. He wanted that limelight. But that's my opinion. But yeah, he started commenting on things. I didn't even realize that he was sick. I just thought that he was getting older, and so it threw me by a loop because I was just trying to process Mr. C, a hip hop pioneer DJ from New York. Like, if you know New York radio, you can't think of New York radio without thinking about Mr. C. I was trying to process that and then turn around the next day and they saying OJ is gone. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on? Like, it caught me off guard. But what's so crazy is it was almost like once he passed, it was like all of the venom came back up and all of these pieces started coming up on YouTube and articles where, again, it was like a modern day lynching. Excuse my French. I hope I can say that. I just said it one time, but it did come out that way. Sorry, it just did. So look, that's my opinion on OJ. OJ caused a lot of this on himself. Yeah, we are. Yes, OJ trifling opportunities. He went Hollywood. We're getting old. Yes, we are, girl. I'm grateful though that I was born at the time that I was to witness this. I really am, because I truly think from music to movies to trending events at the time when social media didn't exist, it was really a time to be alive and witness that stuff in the flesh, like in like not YouTube decades later, but truly see it live in the flesh of what was going on. So people are still mad. And I'm just like, at this point, why don't you have that same energy for other people who had the same situation? Why not the same energy for Robert Blake? I'll tell you why. Because OJ is black. He didn't think he was black, but it just shows you that no matter how successful you are, you're gonna always be black. We have too many men and women who are black who definitely leave this earth with a tainted legacy, even if they were acquitted of all charges. And I find that to be very interesting. That even with a OJ, even with a Michael Jackson still to this day is the GOAT. He was able to raise the bar as far as video, choreography. No one can touch what Michael Jackson built as far as his legacy is concerned. But you can't talk about Michael Jackson without talking about all of the allegations that he went through. No one ever just really does, as far as media is concerned. They don't ever just do a piece on Michael without bringing that up, and sometimes talking about that more than him being, still having Thriller as the biggest selling album, the biggest selling album of all time. No one talks about that, but they'll talk about the accusations that he was also acquitted of. So, it just people still being mad. In my opinion, you gotta be like, you have every right, I guess, to be mad. But one thing I don't do is I'm all for truth, but to truly just attack people who are unalive at this point, people who have family that's grieving. Like, there's just no, like, Caitlyn Jenner talking about some good riddance, like, and then publicly putting it out there, so unnecessary, so uncalled for. Like, if that's something if that's some dialogue that you want to have behind closed doors, fine. But literally, you definitely knew the family. He has children. So the fact that, she was like, good riddance, it just shows people's characters. It really does. It really does. Yes, we are a good generation. The 90s was a time. Yes, indeed. Remember MJ's videos were always world premieres because you knew it was going to be a movie. You knew it was going to be amazing choreography. We ain't had that since, well, besides his sister Janet. To me, they're always going to be the epitome. Like, they're going to be the ones that they're always the blueprint. No one is ever going to be able to come close. No one. Remember the time, yeah, they did. And again, Black also. And as much as I love Michael's music, I think at one point he also felt he was untouchable, and maybe, he felt like he transcends race. Like he wasn't, he wasn't Black. He was just Michael Jackson. I think at one point he felt that way too. And then he also got his wake-up call. So this is a lesson to be learned. Let's just hope that, the family will be able to have some peace, because let's keep in mind, those children couldn't have peace as well. People was following them children around left and right, the oldest ones to the youngest ones. They couldn't even have peace because of this. Mind you, the two youngest had a mother that was gone and a father that pretty much went through this trial, came out, but you clearly know they heard the rumors about their father allegedly doing this, to their father going to prison for like a decade. They've gone through a lot too, but no one cares. No one cares. But those kids went through a lot. They even had surveillance on Jason for a documentary, and he minded his business. Like, I guess he's in the culinary arts profession, and they were literally like tracking him and literally taking video of him just getting out of his car, walking to his workplace, preparing food. I'm like, that's freaking insane. Like, I just can't imagine, because of something that you claim my father did, but he was acquitted, and just for the rest of my life, someone is possibly tracking me over something that I didn't do and they said my father didn't do. That is insane. That is insane. So with that being said, you guys, that was my trip down memory lane and my thoughts on the situation. Again, I don't think he physically did it. And for those who want to comment on it, by all means, comment on it and let me know what you feel about the situation. I'm sure there's probably some of them crazy people are probably going to troll the comment section or thumbs down. I don't care. Use your words and give me a very mature reason or answer as to why you feel that he's guilty. I gave my opinion. I don't feel that he physically did it. I don't. I think it's impossible. Even with a professional, if a professional did it, if two professionals did it, there's no way that these two professionals could have done all of that and within less than an hour be able to take a commercial flight. Even a professional. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they could even be able to do that perfect, like, and be perfect. With making sure that no one suspects anything. And we're talking about OJ, who definitely doesn't have a background in doing anything like that, had a temper, but you never heard anything about him actually using a pokey to do certain things. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't think he physically did it. But again, I would like to know your opinion on the situation. I didn't follow the case specifically enough, so I can't say got it. Either way, sad story it is. It is, because we have one, kids who lost their mother, a family that lost their daughter, their sister. Then we have Ron Goldman, who literally is always they don't really mention him. And that to me is a really sad story, that he was caught in a crossfire or something that seems like had nothing to do with him. And his family, is definitely trying to cope with that. They do, however, continue to say that OJ was guilty. And of course, when they couldn't get the criminal verdict that they wanted, they went after his money, and they were so happy about that. And I'm like, y'all, and again, that's another thing too. I don't see how you can acquit someone and say that they're not guilty on the criminal side of actually doing it, but then say that they're liable as far as their money. That doesn't make sense to me. If they're acquitted on the criminal side, they shouldn't be responsible on the financial side. How was he at fault where he has to pay all of this money on the financial end, but you said he's not guilty on actually doing the crime? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. People forget two people were unalive. Exactly. Exactly. So I feel bad for all of them. I really do. I feel bad for all of the people that were involved. And again, if he did do it, if he did do it, at this point, he's gone. There's a higher power he has to answer to, like Wanda said earlier. And I also agree with that. There's a higher power he has to answer to. So that's just what it is. But it was definitely a time to be a LA girl during this time. I will say that. And honestly, these past couple of days since he passed last week has been very familiar territory on what I remember and what I experienced and what I saw from 94 to 95. Quite interesting that literally 30 years later, it's still the same energy for OJ Simpson. I saw they won 3 million or so, but have only gotten 500,000 allegedly. Yeah, apparently he did what he could to protect his money. And apparently his will makes it, or his trust makes it to where his kids will pretty much get all of his money for the most part. And I don't think that they can touch it. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm not mad at him for that. You say I'm not guilty, criminal on the criminal side. I'm not guilty. I'm not guilty. But then I have to pay millions of dollars to you because you find me liable. That doesn't make any sense. And if I bust my butt, even if it was for very self-centered reasons, if I bust my butt, you trying to tell me you get all of my money and my kids don't get the money? Absolutely not. I can't even blame him and his team for doing whatever they needed to do to make sure that if something happened to him or when something happened to him, that his kids get the financial legacy that he built. I don't blame him for that, because the whole point is that you're supposed to, especially as a man, whether you black, white, purple, whatever, as a man, you provide for your family. And when you're gone, you want that legacy to continue so they can be able to eat off of what you built, period. So I can't blame him for that. Whole thing sad for humanity, lots of lives ruined. Yeah, there it was. And again, I'm not sitting up there making it seem like, because I know some people on even the opposite end, they were truly like laughing at the Browns and the Goldmans. I don't do that either. The thing is though, I can tell you this much: the community still to this day didn't care about OJ. They saw OJ as what OJ represented, a system that has been proven to be effed up, and for him to be able to win against this effed up system, that's what he represented. That's what they were cheering for. Not that they really embraced and appreciated OJ, but more so of what he represented. That's just what it is. Yep, I don't blame him. That's how you handle business. So hopefully his kids will be able to get his money and be able to keep his money. And I think I read somewhere that is the case. And I don't think the Goldmans or the Browns can come after the kids at this point because he's gone, if I read that correctly. But with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Wow, like, hey girl, what's up, Miss Bragg? That's my opinion as LA girl. And it's so crazy. I remember a lot of details. So now I'm really wondering, was this traumatic for me? Which is why I remember this stuff. I'm like, was it that traumatic for me? I remember it. I remember our parents, and we're in the back, and our parents in the front driving us to Bundy Drive, where Nicole was, and us looking at the home and seeing the alley. I remember all of that. I remember listening into the trial, whether we was watching it on TV or if my mom was picking me up from school, I would be listening with her on the radio because it was all over the radio too. You could not escape the OJ trial. You just couldn't. You couldn't. And again, it makes me wonder, if OJ was a white man, would this trial have been just as, magnetic as far as it being a trial of the century? If OJ was white and the wife that passed, that was unalive, was white, would it be the same? Like Robert Blake and his wife? Or if OJ being black and his wife that was unalive was black, would it be the same? I don't think so. It was because OJ was black and Nicole was white. Period. So with that being said, you guys, thank you guys for watching. Yeah, see you next week for that. People were happy that unjust system didn't put him away. Exactly. And again, we had so many losses within the past couple of years. I truly think that that's the reason why people were, they didn't care who it was. They didn't care what black man it was that was going to be on trial. It was all about representation of the effed up system. That's what it was about. And it just so happened to be OJ. It just so happened to be OJ. I do know when he finally did go to jail for what he did in Vegas, I know a lot of us in the community was like, you dumbass. Like, you're a dumbass. Like, you literally got away scot-free on something and you decided to pull some stupid stuff like this. So yeah, in my opinion, the community didn't give a damn about him. But at the same time, respect the passing. You can still have your opinion on a situation. Like, I have my opinion, but I'm not about to say good riddance or have all of this hate towards this man. Like, that's too much energy in my opinion. But with that being said, you guys, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on my next video. Toodles.